You're watching CW Montana. This is the MTN 9 o'clock news.
And good evening. Thanks for joining us on this Thursday. I'm Andrea Lutz. Ahead tonight, new information surrounding an explosion and fire that rocked a Great Falls refinery. We have the cause. It's coming up. Plus, Montana hospitals could cash in. That's if the Montana legislature passes a Medicaid expansion program. We're going to tell you how. But first, as a Montana Highway Patrol trooper remains in critical condition at a Utah hospital, the man suspected of shooting him and killing another appears in court again. Tonight, 28-year-old Jonathan Bursch remains behind bars at the Missoula County Detention Center on a $2 million bond. But he says he's not guilty of the crimes presented against him. Back in mid-March, prosecutors say Bursch of Arlee shot and killed Shelly Hayes and injured Casey and Julie Blanchard over a road rage incident in Missoula. Bursch then fled the scene, traveling to Evro, where he is also accused of shooting Trooper Wade Palmer 3 times in the head. Bursch is scheduled to appear again in court. It's supposed to happen in May. Montana communities continue to battle flood waters tonight, but weather experts say we're only in the early stages so far. MTN's Rob Griggs gives us an overview.
Yeah, we made it through February with record snowfall and cold temperatures. That brought on the ice jams and the flooding, but we're still in a flood season. I talked to Tom Frieders at the National Weather Service to find out exactly where we're at in this spring flood cycle. Frieders says that the ice jam and frozen ground issues that we had are behind us now, but ground saturation flooding is now an issue for us to pay attention to.
As we progress out of that ice jam flood threat, and we had that bitter cold and near record snowfall for February. Those effects lingered now into later March as we saw the snow start to melt out. And so none of that water was able to sink into the ground, and so it all ran off into our streams and rivers, and that's a big cause of all the flooding that we've had recently. But now we've melted out that frost level, and water is able to sink in. So now we're kind of focus in on shorter-term heavy rain events that could produce flooding.
This current weather system obviously bringing us some scattered rain and snow showers to the area, but spring thunderstorms and the occasionally heavy rain that accompany those thunderstorms is just around the corner. In Billings, Rob Griggs, MTN News.
New details surrounding an Arizona tourist who died this week in Lake McDonald in Glacier National Park. Flathead County officials say the man fell through the ice and couldn't make it back to shore. 49-year-old Wei Lu from Tempe died from hypothermia after falling into the lake. We're told he wasn't able to return to the dock. The Park Service continues to investigate. New tonight, a Great Falls refinery says it was the bitter cold freezing a gas line that caused an explosion and fire just last month. The incident happening March 7th. Nearby businesses evacuated, roads even closed, and those with the refinery say the cold snap is what damaged that line. The refinery has since resumed full operations. Montana Senator Steve Daines is asking that a former Blackfeet Reservation doctor serving time for sexually abusing children stop receiving his government benefits. Senator Steve Daines sent a letter to the Secretary of Health and Human Services concerning Dr. Stanley Weber. He's currently serving an 18-year sentence for molesting children in the 1990s. Daines is asking that Weber stop receiving a pension. At the Montana legislature, a bill to boost Montana's urban economies dies in a Senate committee. The bill had heavy interest from Billings in light of the One Big Sky proposal. Supporters say the bill would have fostered private investment in impact districts by allowing tax exemptions. The bill, though, could get revived again on the Senate floor. The Montana legislature eyeing the impact of a major ruling involving Medicaid expansion. It was handed down from a U.S. district judge, and it involves the same condition to work requirements that Montana is considering in this session. MTN's Evelyn Schultz joins us to break it down.
A federal judge in Washington, D.C. has struck down Medicaid work requirements. They're very similar to the ones Montana is considering adopting for its Medicaid expansion program. But it's not yet clear whether Wednesday's court ruling will have much impact on Montana's legislative debate to change the program. The 2019 legislature is debating whether to extend the program past a June 30th deadline. The bill to continue the program would add a form of work requirements. Yesterday's court ruling invalidated the Trump administration decision to approve approve work requirements for Medicaid expansion in Kentucky and Arkansas. The judge said the requirements don't advance Medicaid's goal of providing health coverage to the poor. But the sponsor of the Montana bill says if our legislature approves work requirements, they would likely be approved by the Trump administration and stay in place unless invalidated by the Supreme Court or a separate ruling.
All indications from the federal government is that CMS is going to continue to approve work requirement waivers. And again, everyone needs to really wait and to go through the appeals process and find out what the final court determination is going to be.
Buttrie's bill will be debated on the House floor tomorrow. In Helena, Evelyn Schultz, MTN News.
All right, thanks, Evie. The saga over Medicaid expansion continues this legislative session. But tonight, there is some new information about how Montana hospitals are playing a pretty important role. MTN's chief political reporter, Mike Dennison, shows us how.
If the bill to continue Medicaid expansion in Montana becomes law in its current form, hospitals in the state will pay a 0.875% tax on outpatient services. That tax generates $30 million over the next 2 years to pay at least half of the state's 10% share of program costs.
It's going to support $300 million of health care benefits over the course of the next 2 years. And that's benefits to all of the medical providers who deliver services.
But that's only half of the tax's revenue. The other half, through a fund matching process involving the state and federal governments, generates an additional $100 million a year for the hospitals. The bill from Republican Representative Ed Buttrey also increases something called the hospital bed tax, which almost all Montana hospitals pay. In turn, that tax, using the same matching process, creates another $200 million a year for Montana hospitals. But Olson and Buttrey say this revenue is not a windfall. They say it helps hospitals offset the cost of treating so many additional patients covered by Medicaid, whose reimbursement amounts don't cover hospital costs of providing the service.
Remember, anything that's below the cost of the service provided that they get reimbursed gets cost shifted to folks that have insurance policies and self-pay. So this is not a tack by the hospitals to get rich. This is a tack to help them pay for the services that they have to provide.
This tax revenue generated for the hospitals through Medicaid expansion comes on top of more than $500 million hospitals have been paid in the last 3 years for patients covered by the program. Olson says that money has meant less bad debt, less charity care at the hospitals, stable prices, and more services from hospitals.
We have a number of hospitals that have not raised their rates in the last 2 or 3 years. We have a number of hospitals that have been able to provide additional services.
That's what lawmakers will decide as they debate this issue. Is this huge overall investment in the healthcare system by taxpayers and hospitals worth the return? Reporting from the Capitol, Mike Dennison, MTN News.
And the House is scheduled to debate and vote sometime tomorrow. Legislation inspired by Montana high school students to put gun training in the classroom is making some moves. The bill passed in the House. It's now headed to the Senate. It would require the Office of Public Instruction to develop a gun safety class, and then school districts could implement the course. A group called Helena Youth Against Gun Violence pitched the idea. Shopko shoppers, listen up. Time is running out if you want to use one of your gift cards. Earlier this month, Shopko announced all of its stores closing in Montana, the retailer announcing, of course, that bankruptcy in January. Shoppers have until April 20th to use those Shopko gift cards. And remember, there's 11 of those Shopko stores in Montana. It was another successful Western Art Week in Great Falls. The C.M. Russell Museum says last week's festivities raised, get this, nearly $5 million. 13 significant pieces by Charlie Russell and 4 from Olaf Seltzer were auctioned off, total sales reaching $4.7 million. A Charlie Russell work, naturally the highest earner of that live auction night. The 1897 oil painting called Approach of the White Men sold for a really high $1.3 million, of course, worth every penny. Still to come tonight on the MTN 9 o'clock news, vacant buildings are becoming a major issue in Butte. One man is making it his personal mission to fix the issue. And right after the break, more spring snow probably on the way. Is your area of the state highlighted on Bob McGuire's weather map? We're going to be right back.